So I brought a little friend with me. It's a Russian nesting doll known in Russia as a matryoshka. You want to try it? It's fun. Try it again. It's really fun. Matryoshka. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the woman that I bought it from said, "You're doing great. You're doing great." And she's a Russian woman. She's like, "Oh, that was perfect." Every Russian person I've met since then says, "No, you're not saying it right." But it's a nesting doll, and these are, they go way back in Russia. They are considered a blessing if your family receives one of these nesting dolls because they represent a couple things that I think are significant on our own spiritual journey. They represent fertility, which is, you can keep going within and within and within and within. And they represent perpetuation in that they can continue to expand and expand and expand, which is kind of like our own spiritual journey. So there's a folk tale that is about where these dolls came from, where they originated. And in the folk tale, it's a story about a family of 5 women, and they lived at the top of a very high mountain, sort of a Graceland type of experience. So they lived at the top of the mountain, and there in this home, there was a grandmother. So here's our grandmother. And there was the mother, and the mother had 3 beautiful daughters. And they all lived together at the top of the mountain. Now, the youngest daughter, this little one, her name was Oksana. And Oksana loved more than anything to go running down the mountain. But she never went alone because everybody knows that down on the mountain there are wolves. It's not safe. So she would always bring a sister, and she would go run and play down the mountain, and she was always safe. Well, there was a day where all the women were gathered together at their home at the top of the mountain, and they're preparing for a festival. And they're making these beautiful multicolored scarves that they can wear at the festival. And one of the sisters, the eldest sister, makes a little scarf that's beautiful. She makes it just the right size for little Oksana. And she puts it around her neck, and she says, "This is for you, little sister. Just enjoy it. Go play." And the little Oksana, she was so enamored with it. And her mom said, "Just go outside, go run, play, have a great time. But don't go too far. Just be mindful." And off she goes. So, of course, she wanders out the door, and she's just completely mesmerized by the beauty of this scarf. And when she spins, she loves how the wind takes it, and she loves the colors, and she just kind of gets distracted as she's playing and spinning and floating slowly and slowly down the mountain. Well, a while later, the middle child decides she wants to get a breath of fresh air, so she goes to the window, takes a breath of fresh air, and looks out, and she looks down the mountain, and she sees this tiny little speck of color way off in the distance, dancing and spinning and having a wonderful time. And so she alerts her sisters and her mother and her grandmother, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Oksana, she's wandered far down the mountain. We have to go. She's not safe down there." So the whole family runs down the mountain. Grandma even, she's like, "I don't care, it hurts, but I'm going to get down that mountain. I'm going to take care of my Oksana." So they all rush around and gather around her. And as they gather around her, she sort of wakes up and realizes where she is and how dangerous it had been. She hadn't realized that she had gone that far. And as they embrace her in love together, they make their way back up the mountain. Any of you ever found yourself somewhere waking up down the mountain saying, "How did I get here? I didn't mean to wander quite so far away from Graceland." So this is about the journey of being a human being. We are spiritual beings, and we are human beings. We're having these human experiences. The truth of us is we are spirit, and that's our Graceland. That's our ideal. Sometimes we wander down the mountain. Innocently enough, we wander down there, and it's like, whoops, how do I get back up? So this is about that returning home, returning to that place of alignment. Jesus told us how to do this. When he said, what is our divine purpose? Our divine purpose is to be in that space, is to be at our home at the top of the mountain. He says, when you pray, people said, "Hey, how do we pray, Jesus?" He said, well, when you pray, just pray, invoke the name of the sacred. Father in heaven, your name is sacred. And then he says, pray for thy kingdom to come. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Which is, let me manifest here in this human form that which is true for me in the spiritual realm, on earth as it is in heaven. How do we do that? It's not a solo journey. We can't make it up the mountain by ourselves. There are different spiritual disciplines. I have an organization in ministry now. It's called Spirituality Today, and we work with New Thought churches to help develop their small groups program. So this is something that we cultivate in small groups. It's something that is something you can cultivate in your own life. It's something you can cultivate as a spiritual community. But these aspects, when they're there, when they're healthy, when they're balanced, they let us gather together and head up that mountain together. So there are 5 different spiritual disciplines, and each of them is a manifestation of divine will. So the first will, divine will, different expressions of it, is that we know and understand the divine within us. So the discipline that allows us to know that is the discipline of communion. Communion is our meditation practice, our prayer practice. It's taking time to come here every Sunday. It's taking walks in nature. It's listening to music that brings you joy. All of those things are communion disciplines that bring us back to that place within. And this is Oksana. The name Oksana literally means praise be to God. And this is at the center of everything else. This is what we hold. This is the tiny seed, that seed of faith from which everything can grow. So this is the beginning of the journey, is to know and understand and remember that spirit within us. Do you remember the first time you felt it? For me, I was visiting a church, life bottoms out, and then you sort of have that wake-up experience. And, my first time I sat in a New Thought church, I just cried the whole service. Like, bah! And the second time and the third time. And I think probably the 4th and the 5th time too, because the awakening was such a release. And that's where the spiritual journey begins. It's not the whole journey, but it's the center of the journey. And that's where we begin. So that's the first spiritual discipline. So affirm with me. This is about bringing our human will to our divine will. So affirm with me. I will to experience my oneness with the divine. That's bringing our human will to that spiritual will. And it takes our human will to maintain that discipline so that we continue to remember. So that's the beginning. Now, then, once we have that at our core, we can grow into this next expression of divine will. So it is divine will that we know the God and the Christ that is within us. It is also divine will that we know the God and the Christ and the pureness and the love that is within each other. So the second discipline is about connection. Connection is about being able to connect with people that are of like mind, who can see in you what you see in them. It's having a community like this, where you can say, I behold the good and the love that is you. I behold the God that is you, the Christ that is you. And they say, I get that. And not, yee. There's plenty of that out there. Isn't it nice? Wasn't it like coming home the first time you sat in a room and there's someone up here and they're saying things that you're like, I agree. Yes. I don't have to edit this in my head so that it doesn't offend my soul. Wasn't it nice when you landed here and you're like, I can let that truth out in a way that is supported in my community. So that is important on our spiritual growth as a part of our journey back up the mountain. It's important to have that. If we don't have that, if we don't have this alignment, we end up trying to make things happen instead of surrendering. If we don't have this one, we end up in relationships where they're totally based on what's wrong, complaining. Last week I was speaking in Austin, Texas, and I was staying at the hotel. I woke up in the morning, there's a guy, a real friendly guy, and we're bantering a little bit, and he's like, I said, well, I hope you have a great day. He's like, well, probably not. I went, really? He was like, yeah, not really looking forward to it. I'm like, it's early. Like, already? You're like, this day is kind of done for you? And he's like, well, I got to drive today. It's supposed to rain. And I'm like, well, be careful out there. And he's like, well, honestly, I just want you to feel sorry for me. I said, well, it's working. Great to meet you. And isn't it interesting how often, if you don't know how to connect at this level, then the best we have is connecting at that level. It was connection But there's more, and we're meant for more. We're meant to connect at the level of purpose, at the level of what do you love, and what are you creating, and what is your dream, and how can I support that? That's what this one is about. So let us affirm. Let's affirm that my microphone doesn't fall. Something fell off. That's all right. So let us affirm, I will to celebrate the God in you. So the third expression of divine will. Here's the third one. And this is, notice how they keep growing. So they expand and they expand. These are really fun and they feel good. Feels good when we connect with Spirit. Feels good when we connect with each other. And then we grow into this third one. Divine will is that we continue to see the God in each other, the Christ in each other, even in times of need and times of suffering, even when it's not so easy to see it. This discipline is the discipline of compassion. The discipline of compassion. I love how Mother Teresa said it. She said that her job, she said, every day I see Jesus Christ in all of his distressing disguises. That's what she saw her role as being. Every day I see Jesus Christ in all of his distressing disguises, and I serve that. And that's what compassion is. It's not lessening our light. It's being a light and seeing the light even when the light is not so easy to see. My great-grandfather was a rancher in West Texas. And my great-grandfather used to tell stories. He was a storyteller, and those stories filtered down from generations. And one of my favorite stories that they used to tell about my great-grandfather was the first time he went into the city, the big city. He went to Austin, Texas. He'd never seen anything like it before. He was just awestruck by Austin, Texas. And he stayed at the Driscoll Hotel right down there on 6th Street, back when it was new and all shiny, and he went into his big fancy hotel room. He'd never seen anything so magnificent in his life. And then when it was time to go to bed, he got everything ready, and then he went to blow out the light. Could not blow out that light. He blew on it, and he blew on it, but that thing would not go out. He could not figure out how to blow out that light. So finally, he had to get some sleep, so he took his boot and he put it over the light to make the room dark because he couldn't figure out any other way to control that light. So the next morning, he goes down to the concierge and he says, hey, your light doesn't blow out. You got a problem here. And of course, the concierge understands electricity and that that's a lamp and that there are power switches. And so he comes and he says, here's how you do it. You just hit this button, and this is how you control that power. And that, to me, is what compassion is. It's being able to meet. Sometimes we're really clear, and then something happens in life, and our whole paradigm changes. And nothing works the way it used to work. And we can be going to church every Sunday. We can be studying these principles for years, and then something happens, and it knocks us on our knees. And so it's nice to have people who can say, you know what? There's another way to access the light. There's just this little button. I'll hit it for you right now because I know how to do it. And you can do it when you're ready. This is how it works. And that's what compassion is. It's not limiting our own light. It's just being there, taking off the bushel so that we can shine that light for each other, even when it's kind of hard to remember. So let us affirm together. We'll do this in 2 parts. I will to see the Christ in all of its distressing disguises. Breathe it in. That's being of service to each other, and it feels good. It's a stretch sometimes, and it feels good. So the next one, as we continue to grow and expand, the next piece of our journey up that mountain. This one is, I think, one of the most challenging. And this will is the will that we live what we know in the world, even when people disagree with us. This is a discipline of community. Community is about being your authentic self, even outside the safety of these walls. In here, it's really easy to say, God is all, that all is well, that I am divine, you are divine. It's easy to say that in here. It's not easy to say it outside these doors, because there are people who vehemently disagree with us. There are people who would say, we are sinners, and they believe that. That is their faith system. And it's beautiful for them. And here is my truth. And can I walk out these doors as authentic to my truth as I am when I stand here with you? That's what community is about, because when we can do that, then we can serve the community in a way that's not just about doing a community service project or raising money for a charity. Then we're able to serve our community in a way that's an expression of our faith, which is exponentially more powerful. It allows us to understand our principles at a deeper level. So that is the discipline of community. You know, it's being willing. Anyone ever been bullied by, like spiritual bullying? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, you say your faith, and then they're like, oh, well, have you been saved? You get all the have you been saved things, and you're like, I don't know how I should answer that. Because I think it one way, but I know if I say it the way I think it, you're going to think I mean that, and that's not right. And so we start going in our heads. So this is about being pure to ourselves and authentic to our own faith, and then expressing that through service to the world. So let us affirm together, I will to put my faith in action, through service to the greater community. Breathe that one in. And that brings us over here to Grandma, the great big one. You can't wait for this one, right? So now we're really expanding. So this one is about the will that we continue to expand and grow. It is divine will. We're not done. We may hit these plateaus where it feels really good, and we feel like, oh, okay, I got this, and things are rolling, and I'm manifesting prosperity, and all these great things, and all that is wonderful. We're never done. What's your next edge? What's the next piece? So the discipline at this level is the discipline of challenge, which is not becoming complacent on our spiritual journey, but constantly looking for what's the next level? What's the next level? What's the next level? And continuing to challenge ourselves to grow and to expand. I love, there's a quote by Jesus. I'm going to read this one verbatim because it's so good. Yeah, we call him the Prince of Peace. Here's what he says. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I love this one because it makes you go, huh? What? Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Like, really, Jesus? That doesn't sound very Jesus-like, does it? But if you look at what that means, the greatest challenge we have sometimes is not the things that happen out there, it's the beliefs that are handed to us from the people who love us the most, the people who want to keep us safe and protected, that when we have a divine idea and we say, I want to go create this in the world, they're like, oh, honey, you've never done that before. Do you know what the economy's like? How will you pay your bills? It's like those people who love us, and this Christ presence is saying, I am here to be a sword to that. I am here to challenge every belief that I have assumed throughout my life that has been given to me, handed down from generation to generation, given to me in love. I'm here to challenge those to see if they are my truth. And that's what this challenge piece is all about. So let us affirm together, I will to expand my understanding, and my experience of God. Breathe that one in. You feel that one? So we have communion, we have connection, we have compassion, we have community, and we have challenge. And when all of these are being expressed through our spiritual community, through our small groups, in our own lives, when they're healthy and they're balanced, things grow and they flourish and we come alive. There is one little warning, though. There's a quote by Nietzsche that I love, and he says, whenever I climb, I am followed by a dog called ego. You know that dog? That dog can be a hindrance. You know what I mean? That dog can be a bad dog. And we tend to think of the ego in a bad sense, like that's a bad dog. I don't want the ego. I want to get rid of the ego. But the ego is our human self, so you don't get rid of the human self without getting rid of the human self. You're right? Your ego is along for the ride for as long as you're here. We came here to experience ego and to bring that ego into divine alignment with who we are. So I had a dog that he had a wonderful heart, great dog. I didn't know how to train a dog. So that dog was kind of crazy. I'd come home from work and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you." And he'd jump and he'd be like all, crazy. And it got to where nobody else wanted to be around the dog because he didn't know, he wasn't trained, right? He would jump on the door and he was, a sweet dog. I loved him like crazy, but, he was just kind of a little bit out of control. So I meet my husband, he is like the dog whisperer. You ever seen like the show, The Dog Whisperer, and Caesar Milano? He's like, "Shh," and the dog's like, you take these dogs that are like crazy, like the owner's like, "I gotta get rid of this dog," and here he comes in and he's like, "Shh," and the dog's like, "Okay, whatever you say, whatever you say." Imagine if your ego were that responsive to higher self. You get that? Next time you watch that show, think of that dog, say, "That's my crazy ego," and watch what he does. And think about, what if I could let my ego self transform into a good dog? Because I tell you, once my dog, he was an English Springer Spaniel, once he got a little bit of training so that he wouldn't jump on people. His heart was so good, but he couldn't express his gifts because he wasn't trained, right? So once we had a little bit of training around him, suddenly he is just like, he was our church dog. He was the head of the greeting team. Everyone came to the church, and the first thing you see is a little wag at the door. "Happy to see you, happy to see you." And he never missed a potluck. He was always there, just sitting there. "I'm here if anything falls on the floor, I'm here." And I tell you, that dog was as much of a minister as I ever was. And when people would come in and they'd lost a loved one and we're planning funerals and doing things that are hard, that dog would know just who to walk in. He'd just sit there and just be. He was a minister. And that's the potential that we have when our ego is a good dog and it looks to our higher self for guidance. Suddenly, all of our gifts are able to be expressed. So if you ever go down to Wimberley, Texas, that's where our church was, and there's a stone there. It says Ted the Church Dog, in memory of him, as a reminder of the blessing that there is such thing as a good dog, and that ego self is a gift. If we can train it and discipline it, it's an incredible gift if we can manifest it. So I have my challenge to you is to think about, of these 5 areas, there's probably one that you feel like, "Yeah, I've really got that one going on. My prayer life is great. My meditations are great." Find the one that, acknowledge yourself for the areas where you really have that one down. And ask yourself, of these 5 areas, which one is calling to you to be more fully developed? Which one would you like to develop more fully? And make a 40-day commitment to focusing on that one. And I have a self-assessment survey. If you want to leave an email address, I will email it to you. And you just kind of take it through yourself, and at the end, it'll let you kind of see, it'll give you some questions to help you discern areas where you're strong. And it may be that you want to work on your strength. It doesn't have to be your weakness. But take yourself into that 40-day challenge and challenge yourself. Take on the challenge. So let us affirm together. Take a deep breath in. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. And so it is. God bless you, and thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.